Good Tuesday, everyone, and welcome into today's daily Bible reading for September the 26th. Today we are doing a couple of chapters. We're going to be reading together 2 Kings chapter 11 and 2 Kings chapter 12. We might remember at the end of chapter 10 here in 2 Kings, we had Jehu is the king under consideration. He's up in the northern kingdom, but now we're going to shift our focus back to the southern kingdom, and this goes back to Ahaziah being killed back in chapter 9, whenever Jehu also took him out along with Joram. Remember that Jehu killed Joram, he killed Ahaziah all in the same day, and the rest of chapter 10, chapter 9, chapter 10, focus on the northern kingdom's response to that. Now we're going to see the southern kingdom's response. Who is going to reign in the place of Ahaziah? Let's check that out here in the text. 2 Kings chapter 11, verse number 1. When Athaliah, Ahaziah's mother, saw that her son was dead, she proceeded to annihilate all the royal heirs. Jehosheba, who was King Jehoram's daughter and Ahaziah's sister, secretly rescued Joash, son of Ahaziah, from among the king's sons who were being killed, and put him and the one who nursed him in a bedroom. So he was hidden from Athaliah and was not killed. Joash was in hiding with her in Yahweh's temple 6 years, while Athaliah reigned over the land. In the 7th year, Jehoiada sent for the commanders of hundreds and the Karites and the guards. He had them come to him in Yahweh's temple, where he made a covenant with them and put them under oath. He showed them the king's son and commanded them, "This is what you are to do. A third of you who come to duty on the Sabbath are to provide protection for the king's palace. A third are to be set at the foundation gate, and a third at the gate behind the guards. You are to take turns providing protection for the palace. Your 2 divisions that go off duty on the Sabbath are to provide the king's protection at Yahweh's temple. Completely surround the king with weapons in hand. Anyone who approaches the ranks is to be put to death. Be with the king in all his daily tasks." All the commanders of hundreds did everything the priest Jehoiada commanded. They each brought their men, those coming on duty on the Sabbath and those going off duty, and came to the priest Jehoiada. The priest gave the commanders of hundreds King David's spears and shields that were in Yahweh's temple. Then the guards stood with their weapons in hand surrounding the king, from the right side of the temple to the left side, by the altar and by the temple. Jehoiada brought out the king's son, put the crown on him, gave him the testimony, and made him king. They anointed him and clapped their hands and cried, "Long live the king." When Athaliah heard the noise from the guard and the crowd, she went out to the people at Yahweh's temple. She looked, and there was the king standing by the pillar according to the custom. The commanders and the trumpeters were by the king, and all the people of the land were rejoicing and blowing trumpets. Athaliah tore her clothes and screamed, "Treason! Treason!" Then the priest Jehoiada ordered the commanders of hundreds in charge of the army, "Take her out between the ranks and put to death by the sword anyone who follows her." For the priest had said she is not to be put to death in Yahweh's temple. So they arrested her, and she went through the horse entrance to the king's palace, where she was put to death. Then Jehoiada made a covenant between Yahweh, the king, and the people, that they would be Yahweh's people, and another covenant between the king and the people. So all the people of the land went to the temple of Baal and tore it down. They smashed its altars and images to pieces, and they killed Matan, the priest of Baal, at the altars. Then Jehoiada, the priest, appointed guards for Yahweh's temple. He took the commanders of hundreds, the Karites, the guards, and all the people of the land, and they brought the king from Yahweh's temple. They entered the king's palace by way of the guard's gate. Then Joash sat on the throne of the kings. All the people of the land rejoiced, and the city was quiet, for they had put Athaliah to death by the sword in the king's palace. Joash was 7 years old when he became king in the 7th year of Jehu. Joash became king, and he reigned 40 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Zibiah. She was from Beersheba. Throughout the time the priest Jehoiada instructed him, Joash did what was right in Yahweh's sight. Yet the high places were not taken away. the people continued sacrificing and burning incense on the high places. Then Joash said to the priest, all the dedicated silver brought to Yahweh's temple, census silver, silver from bowls, and all the silver volunteer given for Yahweh's temple, each priest is to take it from his assessor and repair whatever damage is found in the temple. But by the 23rd year of the reign of King Joash, the priest had not repaired the damage to the temple. So King Joash called the priest Jehoiada and the other priests and asked, why haven't you repaired the temple's damage? Since you haven't, don't take any silver from your assessors. Instead, hand it over for the repair of the temple. So the priest agreed that they would not receive, that they would receive no silver from the people and would not be the ones to repair the temple's damage. Then the priest Jehoiada took a chest, bored a hole in its lid, and set it beside the altar on the right side as one enters Yahweh's temple. The priest who guarded the threshold put into the chest all the silver that was brought to Yahweh's temple. Whenever they saw there was a large amount in the silver in the chest, the king's secretary and the high priest would go bag up and tally the silver found in Yahweh's temple. Then they would give the weighted silver to those doing the work, those who oversaw Yahweh's temple. They in turn would pay it out to those working on Yahweh's temple, the carpenters, the builders, the masons, the stonecutters, and would use it to buy timber and quarried stone to repair the damage to Yahweh's temple and for all the expenses for temple repairs. However, no silver bowls, or wick trimmers, sprinkling basins, trumpets, or any articles of gold or silver were made for Yahweh's temple from the contributions brought to Yahweh's temple. Instead, it was given to those doing the work, and they repaired Yahweh's temple with it. No accounting was required for the men who received the silver to pay those doing the work, since they worked with integrity. The silver from the guilt offering and the sin offering was not brought to Yahweh's temple, since it belonged to the priests. At that time, King Hazael of Aram marched up and fought against Gath and captured it. Then he planned to attack Jerusalem. So King Joash of Judah took all the idols consecrated by himself and by his ancestors, Judah's kings Jehoshaphat, Jehoram, and Ahaziah, as well as the gold found in the treasuries of Yahweh's temple and in the king's palace, and he sent them to King Hazael of Aram. Then Hazael withdrew from Jerusalem. The rest of the events of Joash's reign, along with all his accomplishments, are written in the historical record of Judah's kings. Joash's servants conspired against him and killed him at Beth Millo on the road that goes down to Selah. It was his servants Jozabad, son of Shemaeth, and Jehozabad, son of Shomer, who attacked him. He died, and they buried him with his ancestors in the city of David, and his son Amaziah became king in his place. And that is the reading of Second Kings chapter 11 and Second Kings chapter 12. So what does Judah do once their king has been killed by Jehu? Well, instead of the next natural successor being elevated to the place of the throne and the crown, we see that Athaliah, Ahaziah's mother, she usurps the throne. It was not her right whatsoever to sit on this throne. She clearly usurped it. And in doing so, she actually put a pause on the lineage of David ruling over Judah, which was not according to Yahweh's will. And what she also did is she went about basically trying to eradicate those who could be in the lineage of David. I think it's probably right to say that this was a demonic attack on God's will, on his promises that he had made to David, to have one sitting on his throne forever, for the great promises made to David, again, that we look back and we see as being clearly messianic. This was an attempt to snuff that out, to just stop it altogether. And she would have succeeded if it was not for the incredible heroism of Jehosheba. This woman, who was Ahaziah's sister, probably by a different mother. So Athaliah was probably not her mom, but she would have been Jehoram's daughter, again, by another woman. Just remember, Athaliah, terrible woman. She was the granddaughter of King Omri, who was bad. She was the wife of Jehoram, who was not a good king. And she, to top it off, was the daughter of Ahab and Jezebel. So this is a bad woman. And yet this woman, Jehosheba, who is the wife of Jehoiada, we find out in Second Chronicles, she saves the day, basically. She saves the lineage of David by taking Joash and rescuing him from the slaughter, hiding him in the temple for 6 years during the reign of King Athaliah. Yet finally in the 7th year, he is basically unveiled to the people. You might wonder, what were the people doing? Why were they just submitting themselves to the rule of Athaliah, which no doubt was a very wicked rule? I think we could see that and infer that pretty easily from the fact that the temple was in such disrepair, and from the fact that they end up going and destroying a temple of Baal that had been constructed within Judah itself. Not only that, but there were priests, there were altars, there were images, all of that stuff was now present within Judah and presumably, I guess, within Jerusalem. That's terrible. That's awful for that to be a reality. Yet that was the result of Athaliah being the queen during this time as this usurping force. But Jehoiada ends up bringing out Joash, makes this big plan for him to be elevated to king because he is the rightful king. It's not like Athaliah has any sort of legitimate claim to the throne. She does not, but Joash does. So after he constructs this whole plan, he ends up anointing him and making him king, going through all the normal customs. Athaliah sees this, and she says, this is treason. Interesting that she would claim treason. I guess technically, since she assumed this power, it would be treason, but in reality was not. This is the rightful heir to the throne. Jehoiada orders for her to be taken and killed, but not in Yahweh's temple. That was a sacred place. Her blood was not to be spilled there, but she was taken from there and she was killed. And again, once that took place, once that evil force was out of the way, now Jehoiada gets things back to where they need to be. They need to be the people need to be aligned with the king, need to be aligned with Yahweh. So he makes this covenant between Yahweh, the king, and the people, that they would be Yahweh's people, because they had not been, it seems, for the past 6 years under the ruling and leading of Athaliah. And there's also a covenant made between the king and the people, that there would be this good relationship between them. And it is at this point they go and they destroy the temple of Baal and get rid of all of that paganism that was within the lands. From there, Joash ends up being, again, put into the position of king. He's well known and probably really familiar to us because he was only 7 years old when he became the king. And it's just very interesting that he was so young. That's just incredible for us to think about. Olivia is 7 years old. Could you imagine Olivia or some child her age being the king over an entire nation? That's crazy to think about. Yet he was able to do that because Jehoiada assisted him and led him in the right paths. He became king at 7, and in the 7th year of his reign, let's see here. He became king in the 7th year of Jehu's reign, and he ends up reigning for 4 years. So he reigns until the age of 47. The verse number 2 again gives us that throughout the time that he was king, or throughout the time that Jehoiada instructed him. So as long as Jehoiada was around, Joash did well. Not to get too much into the Chronicles, but once we get to the Chronicles, we're going to see that once Jehoiada leaves the story, once he passes, things unfortunately don't go as well for Joash. And again, we'll note that as we get into the text of the Chronicles. Now, it's not that everything that was within the time of Joash was good. Unfortunately, the high places were not taken down. So they continue to burn incense, offer sacrifices at the high places. They practice convenient worship instead of practicing Yahweh authorized worship, and that certainly was not a good thing. Yet one of the things that Joash is remembered for is the fact that he wanted to repair the temple. That during the 6 years, again, this seems of Athaliah's reign, the temple was neglected. Things that needed to be taken care of were not taken care of, and by the time he sees that and recognizes this, he says, "Hey, we need to address this. So naturally, let's put the priest in charge. Let's allow them to head the effort to take care of the repairs of the temple. So he allowed for their funds, the funds of the census silver, the vow silver, the free will offering silver. All of that would be given to the priest, and they would be the ones then who would go and they would use this money to repair the temple. Fortunately, it seems they were not exactly very motivated to do this. So 23 years into his reign, he notices that things aren't being done. And he says, hey guys, what's the deal? They don't really have anything to say. So he says, fine. So he says, fine, I'm taking this away from you. I'm not going to allow you to continue just waste this money. I'm going to give this to other people, and they're going to do what's necessary. So he takes the funds from them, redistributes this to these other individuals. Jehoiada also sets out a chest that people can give money to, and they end up giving this to people who are going to do the job, the carpenters, the builders, the masons, the stone cutters. Instead of going through the priest, he's going to give it directly to the people, and they're going to get the job done. The text even says that there was no need to do any sort of accounting for them because they worked with integrity. I think that's purposeful there. I think that's purposeful that he identifies these individuals as having integrity and doing the work that needs to get done, as opposed to the priests who weren't. Remember, once we get to the time of the prophets, it's not just the kings that are rebuked. It's not just the elders, the people that are rebuked. The priests are also rebuked for not carrying out Yahweh's will among the people. Here, I think we start to see the first inklings of that within the text. We also see in 17:18 that Hazael of Aram ends up being a thorn in the side of Judah as well. And again, just reading it from this text, not worrying about the Chronicles. We'll get that once we get there, add in some additional information. But here, Joash just kind of rolls over. He just rolls over, gives some tribute to Hazael, and Hazael leaves him alone. So we don't see a great deal of courage or backbone here from Joash. And then, excuse me, we end up reading that actually he ends up being assassinated by two of his servants. And then he dies, and his son Amaziah ends up becoming king within Joash. Or excuse me, becomes king in Joash's place in Judah. So that is the story of what does what does Judah do after Jehu takes out Ahaziah? Athaliah usurps, but Jehoiada and Jehosheba spring into action. They're willing to have courage to do what is necessary to preserve the promises of Yahweh. And so we also trust that this is Yahweh at work here, that Yahweh is working through these individuals to accomplish his will, and that wickedness and evil, demonic attacks to wipe out the line of David, it's not going to work. God's made a promise, and he's going to make sure that promise comes to fruition. And then we see, again, Joash, even in his youth, recognizing what is good, having a good role model and a good mentor in Jehoiada. Whenever we see that together, good things end up taking place. Tomorrow we'll be reading from 2 Kings chapter 13. We're going to get back up to the northern tribes of Israel. And also we're going to see, unfortunately, Elisha's death here within this chapter too. So lots to look at tomorrow. Hope that you can join me then. Thank you so much for reading along with me today. Hope you have a great rest of your Tuesday. May God bless you in all that you do. And I hope to see you tomorrow. Take care. God bless.